Hi, welcome everybody to tonight's webinar, and we will be speaking about self-sabotage tonight. A lot of you are new to working with me or seeing me present, so very welcome, and it's good to see some familiar faces on here as well. So I'd like to pose a question as we get going. And the question is, what is self-sabotage? So those of you that have actual video, you can raise your hand and we'll enable the mic for you to answer. What do you think self-sabotage is, or what is your definition of self-sabotage? Because there seem to be many definitions, and there's no right and there's no wrong, I think. But what is your definition? Because it obviously means something to you. So anybody want to volunteer? Susie? Or sorry, Nikki? Dave, go on.
Got it.
Yeah, to me, it's getting in my own way, really. And I can always see myself sometimes waiting for something bad to happen and things are going well. So I know from stuff I've been doing with you, that's attracting the wrong thing to myself. But it's still something that I know I do.
Yeah. So it's like similar to imagine driving your car, and you see something in the road that you want to avoid, but all you do is just keep looking at that. Where do you end up? Do you avoid it or do you hit it?
End up over it. Yes. Yeah.
So just in a simple analogy, that's it. But some of us do actually have that. We at the forefront of our mind are the behaviors that we don't like, and we try hard to change them, to remove them, and wonder why they're still there. They're still there because we keep them at the forefront of our mind, and whatever we focus on, we create. That's one of the basic kind of laws under which humans operate. So what we focus on continuously is what we create. So something for you to focus on is the question, what is it that you keep imagining that you don't want to happen? And if you keep on imagining it, all you're going to do is end up scaring yourself. Whether it happens or not, you still suffer.
Yeah.
So anybody else, what is self-sabotage? And Dave, actually, could you enable some of the people who don't have a video camera to be able to speak so that they can share?
Yeah, I was also just going to remind everyone there's a Manage Participants button at the bottom of your screen. If you click that, you'll get a box open up on the right-hand side that gives you the opportunity to raise your hand and answer yes, no to any questions as well. So if you can't raise your hand on the screen, you can raise your hand on the sidebar and we can open the mic up.
And also, just to let you know, tonight's event is meant to last about an hour or so, and it's in two sections. So the first section, after I've just finished this short introduction, is Dave will be running through a short presentation, and then we'll be open to question and answer. So those of you that have specific questions, whether you have a video camera or not, you'll be able to ask them, and we'll attempt to answer them as well. Now, this presentation was put together many, many weeks ago, and obviously the world situation has changed dramatically. So you may have questions around that as well, because self-sabotaging behaviors also occur during these times. And it will be really relevant to you to identify where it is that you are sabotaging yourself during these times, and where can you improve yourself, where can you remove those behaviors or be more conscious of them, so that then you can actually do something about them. So without further ado, I'm going to actually just pass over to Dave just to run through the presentation, and then we'll come back to this screen where you can ask questions or raise your hand, and we'll get through to the second part. So Dave, take over.
Thank you very much. That should now be sharing. So can everyone see the self-sabotage display? Does that come up okay?
Yes, it has.
Yeah, cool. Okay. We'll start with the welcome. We've sort of done that a bit already. So yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I've also just going to slightly move my camera thing over so I'm not looking across the screen as I'm speaking. Well, yes, first slide, what is self-sabotaging behaviour? And Sanjay, you've just asked the question really, what is self-sabotage? I think the clinical definition is behaviour that's said to be, that creates problems within our life and interferes with long-standing goals. And it also stops us reaching our full potential. But really, as you just said, it's whatever it is for you, because self-sabotaging behaviour does cover a wide spectrum. There are some common behaviours, self-sabotaging behaviours: procrastination, self-medication in terms of drug or alcohol consumption, comfort eating, and even conflict can be a self-sabotaging behaviour. And at the time they can seem great, you know, that's, I don't know, you know, whatever it may be. If it's drink, drugs, for example, at the time it gets you out of that space, gets you out of feeling the way you're feeling. Ultimately, though, these are the things that undermine us, and in the long term, I think actually self-sabotaging behaviour may well just be short-term behaviours that avoid a long-term outcome, maybe. And even when you're aware of these behaviours and aware of the patterns and the things that you're doing, that doesn't necessarily either stop you having the behaviours, or indeed it can make it even more of a challenge because you know you're doing it and yet you still keep doing it. It's an ongoing thing, and sometimes even that awareness in itself can become an issue because you know you're doing it and you're still doing it. The patterns are there. So yeah, are you self-sabotaging? Do any of the following sort of things, behaviours, resonate? Do you focus more on what's not working? So, you know, focusing on the negative things all the time. Fear of the future. Feeling like you have no value maybe, and your contribution's never quite up to it and you're never quite good enough. Or even criticising, self-criticising, and doubting what you're capable of, the way you compare yourself to others maybe. And chasing away of relationships. Quite often people find you have the conversation with someone and they've maybe broken up from a relationship, and it's sort of like everyone I'm with, every relationship I'm in ends the same way, or the other person is always the same type of person. So there's that repetition of things that are going on maybe within the relationship that ultimately cause it to end. Or even feeling like there's no purpose to life, or why are you here, or, you know, what's it all about? And I think, as Sanjay, as you said, you know, particularly with what's happening at this moment, you know, now with coronavirus, that a lot of those things, especially about the purpose and the worth, are coming up for a lot of people. Oh, gone backwards. So feeling of a lack of self-worth, one of the main reasons of participating in a self-sabotaging behaviour. And for that, it's quite often, well, it's the inability to see ourselves as others, as we see others. Quite often, or quite easy to see other people in a good light and notice the things that they do and do well. And then when it comes to ourselves, we're looking at ourselves and thinking, well, I'm never able to, I'm not capable of that. I'm not as good as them. Looking for approval from others quite often is a deep emotional cause of it. It's that just lack of self-approval, or seeking approval from others to justify what you're doing or why you're doing it. And the fear of failure, again, is another a cause of the feeling of the lack of self-worth. And should you take the steps, and should you do the things that you're planning? Because what happens if it all goes wrong? Again, back to that tending to see the negative side of things all the time. And equally, the opposite of fear of failure, the fear of success. And for some people, that is indeed a thing that they hold themselves back. But by deciding that they're not capable, they're then preventing themselves from taking the steps and doing the things that would actually bring the success that they're absolutely capable of and deserving of. And imposter syndrome. The higher you rise, the further you have to fall. And certainly, again, if your underlying feelings are around your self-worth and your ability, that fear of success is really the fact that how high can you get, how good can you be, because the downside will always come, which isn't necessarily ever going to be the case. So the fear of not being good enough. I think it's Tony Robbins that says, fake it till you make it. Well, that's a good mantra for some people, and that may well work to a point, but if the underlying feelings are you ever really going to be good enough? You could fake it, but that faking it doesn't ever get to the point where you're going to be happy with what you're doing. The idea being, if you fake it for long enough, you'll get good enough. But if your underlying self-worth isn't there, that's not necessarily going to happen. So finding comfort in pain or boredom. Other reasons why we turn to self-sabotaging behaviours. And that can be due to familiarity and boredom. Some of us are very much creatures of habit. And sometimes that means that we can choose being comfortable over the idea of getting things done. It's easier to be comfortable. It's easier just to relax into things and let the status quo remain, rather than maybe pushing against things and pushing the boundaries. That lack of drive to move out of the comfort zone, because being in those habitual routine behaviours keeps everything safe, it keeps you comfortable, keeps everything on track, and you're not rocking the boat. And sometimes, again, that tendency to put other people before yourself, so you look to their needs and the things that you can do for them without necessarily thinking about the things that you can do for yourself. And quite often, again, we realise we're doing these things, and it can either make us unhappy or uncomfortable. And yet we'd prefer to do that than to maybe make the decisions and do the things that move us out of the comfort zone and start to move us in a more positive way, maybe. Boredom, well, yeah, we could turn to self-sabotaging behaviours because we're bored. Or even creating a drama just to get some action, just to get something going on. There are people that love to have an argument and will push, and you can start the conversation, or maybe there's a disagreement over something, but they'll push it and they'll look for the reaction. And sometimes, in fact, if you don't give them the reaction that they're looking for, that gets them even more inclined to want to argue and cause some confrontation, some conflict, because they like it to be stirred up. Sometimes it's that because afterwards they get the comfort or the reassurance that they were really looking for. But the good news of all of this is that self-sabotaging, well, I say good news, it does follow patterns. There are patterns there. You can look into it and you can find the patterns and see those repetitions and repetitive behaviours, those situations that keep cropping up through your life, and you can look back and think, I've seen this before, and yet I'm still doing the same things. And once you've spotted those patterns, then it actually then gives you the opportunity to change things and to start to change the patterns, change your behaviours. So, as I say, pinpointing your pattern, the thing is to look back over your life at these things that have happened. If you find yourself carrying out some of the behaviours that I mentioned, the binge drinking or drugs or eating or whatever it may be, they come up again and again, these instances in your life. So looking for those commonalities, looking for those clues. Where are these? When you notice you've been doing these behaviours, what are the clues? What are the things around those behaviours? What's been going on in your life? What other things have been happening? What are the stresses maybe? So, you know, stress from another area comes into your life. You start exhibiting or going through these patterns and these behaviours. And self-sabotage can also be a misdirected form of self-love. In a way, it's the ego protecting you. It's that part of you it's how would I say it? The ego protecting you from yourself. It wants to keep you safe. So when I was saying earlier about you know, staying comfortable and not pushing the boundaries, or the fear of failure, it's the ego just saying to you, well, look, that's an unusual thing that you might be doing. That's a new behaviour, a new pattern. So let's just be careful. Let's just hold back. Let's stay into the habits and the behaviours that we know, because we've always been safe. I've always looked after you when you've been doing these things. So let's not step out of that. And that fear of failure. Fear is an emotion that most people would rather bury or ignore, instead of maybe just looking at it, confronting it, and just experiencing it. Maybe when you're frightened, and again, this is a great time at the moment for thinking about the fear and what you're afraid of, and a time maybe just ask the question, you know, what am I scared of? What is it that's scaring me? Why is it scary? What's the worst case scenario, and could I handle it? Because things will be happening whether we like it or not. And as those things happen, it's how we react. And then maybe not in the present situation, but you know, there are times when you could say, okay, so I'm afraid of doing something. Does this fear outweigh my desire for the end result, for what I'm looking for? But when you start to ask the questions, rather than just being frightened and acting from that place or reacting from that place, by actually going in and just checking in and asking a few questions of yourself and how you feel and why you feel it, that fear starts to lose its power, starts to lose the control and lose the effect it's having. And actually, by continuing to ask those questions, the fear can melt away. And not just with fear, with any of the, shall I say, maybe the sort of the lower emotions. And certainly there'll be a lot of, you know, there's grief around at the moment, fear, as I say, it maybe even anger at the thought of what's happening. And with any of those emotions, facing and embracing, well, maybe not embracing in terms of more case, I think, of giving it some attention and acknowledging it, at least. Acknowledging the fact that you're feeling the way you are. But in that acknowledging, again, it gives you the opportunity to at least just say, okay, so this is how I'm feeling, but what does that mean? What does that mean for me? What are the possible outcomes when I'm feeling like this? And just that internal noticing of the emotions and noticing of what you're feeling doesn't mean you have to embrace it with open arms and fall into it, if you like, but that attention to it is a way of just working through it and allowing the hold that it seems to have over you to just loosen, and then it falls away. And one of the things we can do is commit to, as it says here, new healthy goals every day. And sometimes it's just the small things. This doesn't have to be big steps. This doesn't have to be life-changing events or life-changing occurrences over a small amount of time. Setting small goals and taking small steps will help you accomplish things. It may be as simple as just a to-do list. Just a few simple things that you can do every day. I know there's I've seen a YouTube video. I think it's an American Marine colonel or some. So he's doing a speech to a school graduation ceremony, and his thing is make your bed every day. Make your bed every day, because if you get up in the morning, no matter what you've got to do, no matter what's ahead of you, how good or how bad you think your day is going to be, start by making your bed. And if nothing else, you've accomplished one thing that day. If the rest of the day just turns to whatever, you've accomplished something. That to me is a perfect example of setting a small goal that's actually very easy to accomplish. It's not even got to be challenging, but it means you've set something and you've accomplished it. Small obligations allow you to cross a list of small, simple to achieve things, means you can just start crossing them off during the day, which then starts leading to its own fulfillment of achieving things. Stop assuming things, yeah. Stop believing your thoughts. The tendency with most, if not all people, is to believe everything they think, because when you think a thought, it's in your head and it's your thought, therefore you believe it, therefore it must be true. So, for example, at the moment, if you think, right, you know, there is a pandemic and this will happen and this will happen and this will happen, because it's your thoughts, you're not taking maybe the time just to check in to see if they're true or not. You believe them. As with many things in life, if you think somebody's I don't know, somebody's supposed to call you and they don't call you, there could be 1,000 different reasons why they didn't call you, but you'll latch on to the one that you think is true and then believe it. So if you believe that they've not called you because they're angry with you for some reason, then that's what you'll believe. They're ignoring you because they don't like you. That's what you'll believe. And it could be that they haven't called you because they can't find their phone, or they've left their phone in their pocket, and, you know, thousands of different reasons. So by believing the thoughts that we have automatically without question to be true, you're setting yourself up to get yourself on a path, and it's only going the one way, and you're not considering maybe some of the options. Because the problem with thoughts is we have somewhere in the region of 60 to 80,000 thoughts every day. And those thoughts are popping up constantly. So in the time that we've been on this webinar, the time that I've been speaking, you would have had several hundred thoughts. But how many of them will you remember? How many of them are you actually conscious of that you're having? Because as with the iceberg, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind below the conscious mind is vast. So of those 60 to 80,000 thoughts that you're having every day, you're possibly aware with the iceberg, there's 10% of an iceberg above the waterline. So if that analogy was the same for the conscious and the subconscious mind, you'd possibly be aware of 6,000 to 8,000 thoughts in a day, a few hundred thoughts an hour maybe. But that's all you're aware of. So there's an awful lot of thinking going on underneath. And if you're believing all of your thoughts to be true because you're not questioning them, then there's a lot of true thoughts kicking around that you're not even aware that you're having. So when you get to the point that you're having all these thoughts and then you're going to be taking actions to get results, it doesn't need much of a percentage of the thoughts that are in the subconscious mind to not be positive thoughts, to be the thoughts where you're wondering if you're worthy. You've got the thoughts about, are you good enough? The thoughts about what would happen, the worst will probably happen. And you're not even aware you're having the thoughts, but you're carrying out your actions, you're doing things to get results based on possibly as many, if not more, negative thoughts than positive, but you're going to be unaware of it. If, on the other hand, you think of the emotions, and you might only have as few as maybe one or two emotions during the day. But as I said earlier, with something like fear, you're frightened and you act out of that fear. if you had the thought about something, you're frightened, you then take action to get some results, acting from fear, feeling the fear and acting anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. When you're in that situation, you're still acting from the fear. So the actions you take are actions from a place of fear. If, on the other hand, you had the fearful thoughts and you just, as I said, checked in and just questioned, are the thoughts true? What's the fear feeling? Checking in on the feeling, allowing it maybe to just settle and dissipate. You come out of that feeling of fear. You come into maybe a more calmer, happier place. Then you take the action to get the results. You're now acting from a better place, if you like. So the actions you take from feeling in a better way than you are when you're feeling fearful, for example, are liable to get you either much better results or results with a lot less effort and energy. So doing less to feel better. Quite often, and again with the self-sabotaging types of behaviours, they're often brought on by a feeling of overwhelm as well. When you've got an awful lot to get done, you can't see the wood from the trees. You're not sure where to start, and there can be different reasons and different things around overwhelm, leading to self-sabotaging behaviours. For some people, saying no when they mean yes. For other people, saying yes when they really mean no. That in particular for some people can be quite challenging. You're asked to do something and you don't really want to do it, but it's easy just to say yes. The issues then become your commitments are piling up, and the time you've got to do them is just, they won't fit into the time you've got. Then you're in the position of thinking, right, I've now got all these things to do. How am I going to get them all done? I don't even know where to start. Therefore, I won't even start. And there's the procrastination type behaviour coming in. But again, once you recognise you're doing it, you get the opportunity at least to take steps and maybe start saying no a little bit more often when you were going to say yes, or say yes a little bit more often when you were going to say no. But at least you're aware of it. And finding other things that you like doing as well, making time for yourself. I think that's as much about to counter things like the feeling of lack of self-worth. So, for example, it might be that you've got a particular hobby or a particular like cooking, animals, whatever it may be. Cook yourself a dinner. Cook it for yourself, not necessarily for someone else, but do it for yourself. And accountability partners, communities. I think this at the moment is a time when, going forward, we might find ourselves in our communities of different areas more closer than ever, whether that be your local community in the area that you live in, online communities, various different things. But we'll become closer. Surrounding yourself with like-minded people, specifically from the sort of the self-sabotaging behaviour point of view, surrounding yourself with like-minded people is always going to be powerful. If you've got negative thoughts, if it's the fearful thoughts, finding people around to mix with that are more positive, that are happier, better to be with. If when we allow back in the gyms, get yourself a gym buddy, someone to work out with, to work alongside, to compete. Well, not compete with, maybe to support each other might be a better way of putting it. And groups and clubs. And again, I think at the moment we're finding, there are different. I mean, I'm getting inundated with notifications and invites to different webinars as we're doing tonight. At the moment, I think Zoom, I don't know what their shares are worth, but it's forming communities, it's forming groups. People are beginning to realise, all right, if we can't meet in person, let's meet online, but let's at least meet, let's communicate, let's share. And then if you do sort of find yourself slipping back into unhealthy habits or behaviours, you've also then got someone that can pick up on that for you and just maybe point it out to you and give you again, it's all about giving yourself the opportunity to change the decisions and change the behaviours. When I first read this quote, I thought, yeah, okay. And then I read it again and thought, life will bring you pain all by itself. Well, it may, yeah. But then again, it may not. Life will bring you what it brings you. And regardless of what it brings you, I do agree. Your responsibility is to create joy, create happiness, create as good a life for you and everyone that you know and you're with. And fear of the unknown can hold us back. But thinking that life will bring you pain, it will bring you pain, but not just pain. Life could also bring you happiness. Life will bring you whatever it brings you. Think about creating joy. Now, I didn't write this slide because I wouldn't have worded it quite like that. Bringing and accepting more love into your life. Again, the feelings of self-worth and the behaviours that can lead to. Not accepting love into your own life and loving yourself. If you're always putting yourself into, if you're always putting other people first, always putting other people in front of yourself, you're then not allowing yourself to expand to your full potential. And if you're putting other people first so that they will love and appreciate and approve of you, the unfortunate thing with that is you can't always guarantee it. And no matter how nice you are to some people and how much you do for some people, they're not necessarily going to appreciate it. Or if they do, tell you that they are, that they do. And if you're doing it, if you're doing the things for them so that they will give you some love and appreciation and they don't show it, then your self-sabotaging behaviours are liable to come back again. You can't control the love you receive from other people. You can control the love that you give yourself and the care that you give yourself. And it can be something as simple as just praising yourself and spotting the things that you do that are positive, that are good. I used to and have for a couple of years done a business planning day every 3 months. And one of the exercises we do is to sit down for a few minutes with a pen and paper and write down all the positive things that have happened in the last 3 months and all the things that you've achieved. And it's surprising the number of things that you can come up with or you think of that you've completely overlooked. Not I was going to say forgotten, but it's not forgotten. It's things that you've overlooked. Things that you've done, things that you've achieved. And again, it's easy to look at other people and say, oh, well done for this, and that was good. And never really stopping to think, actually, what I just did was good. What I'm doing is to a high level. And again, if you're waiting for people around you to congratulate you, pat you on the back and say what a good job you're doing, you might be waiting for a very long time. Because again, they may appreciate it, but they might not be able or willing to say it. So give yourself a pat on the back. Maybe again, when I said earlier, making lists of things to do, to tick off and get about yourself. It's do a list of things that you've achieved. Look back over the last few weeks or months. What have you achieved? What have you done? Congratulate yourself. And also listen to your body. Listen to your intuition. Taking care of your physical body. If you're ignoring your aches and pains and uncomfortable feelings, then you're not putting yourself first again. And you're not showing the body the self-respect that maybe it deserves in the same way as your mind and your sort of energetic body. So don't overlook your body and your health. And again, at the moment, it's something that's more of a focus than ever. It's the first time I've ever heard the government say, go out and take some exercise. So don't overlook that either. And again, so focusing on the positives. With so much of your thoughts, so many of your thoughts, unconscious thoughts, you're not going to be aware of a lot of the negative ones. But yeah, focusing on the positives, in that sense, could be easier said than done. But some of the things that you could consider is, again, a lot of this is just simple things, simple steps that you can take. Practicing positive affirmations. You could say to yourself, every morning when you wake up, you get up, you make your bed, because that's on your list of things to do. And you say to yourself, you could be, I deserve to be happy. It could be that you don't think you deserve to be happy. How about, I'll allow myself to be happy today. I'll allow myself to trust my intuition. I am worthy of love. I'm not worthy of other people's love, but I'm equally worthy of my own love. Maybe also thinking of failures as opportunities rather than failures. Again, it's that judgment. You've done something, it's maybe not turned out the way you were hoping or the way you thought it would. And it's easy to label that as a failure. Who's to say it was a failure? Some negative outcomes or less positive outcomes than you were expecting can actually end up to be quite really positive things. I think Edison was quoted as saying, I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And he kept going till he found one that would work. And I think the other thing is, looking at the big picture. An example I was given was, if you get a parking ticket, well, at the time it's not very pleasant and it can be annoying and it can be frustrating. But will it feel the same in a week or a month or a year's time? And again, I think at the moment with what's happening and the fear and the uncertainty around it, yeah, it is horrible at the moment. And it's bad for a lot of people. It may get worse. But will it be the same in a month's time? Maybe. 6 months' time? Maybe not. A year's time? 10 years' time? When we're looking back in 10 years' time, how will we feel about it? How will you feel about it? I think just sort of really just about to wrap up now, but thinking about past actions as well. I mean, I've been talking a lot about fear of the failure, fear of the future, and feeling fear of doing it anyway, and things along that line. But again, for some people, actually, it's caught up in past actions and things that have happened prior and previously, and those can be the things that hold them back in terms of going forward, because they're going to be comparing everything in the future to what happened in the past. Learn to forgive yourself for past actions. Whatever you did in the past, you cannot do anything about it now because it's been and gone and done. It's very likely that whatever you did for the best of reasons at the time, or the best way you could, even if it wasn't to the results that you were expecting or were hoping for. Maybe you could do better now, but you couldn't then. So when you're thinking about the things that may have happened in the past that didn't go well, again, look at the positives that may have come from them. And quite often when things are going bad at any given time, it's only in the future when you look back and you can see maybe where the positives were going to come from them. So then maybe when you're looking in the mirror and you're not so sure, maybe start talking to yourself in the way that you would talk to other people and advise other people, because it's generally seems to be the case that we can give other people advice and we can give positive affirmations, positive help, positive comments to other people, telling them that it's not as bad as they think, or telling them it could be better, or telling them how good they are. But we don't always do it to ourselves. So maybe when you're looking in the mirror and you're talking to yourself, or maybe when you're just talking to yourself, think about how you would talk if you were given the same advice to another person, someone that you loved. How would the advice differ? How would it change? And if you need to defend yourself to yourself, defend yourself in a way that you would if you were protecting a friend or a parent or a loved one. And that's the self-sabotaging presentation. So that's the end of this section of the webinar. Thank you all for your attention so far, and I think we're now going to open up back to Sanjay with questions and see where we go from there. So I'll end the screen share. That should bring us back to.
Thank you, Dave. And how many of you recognize some of those behaviors that Dave was talking about? How many of you actually do some of those behaviors? And I like to make things really simple. So I'm going to give you my definition of self-sabotaging behaviors.
It's not easy to say, is it?
Me too. Cut that bit short as well. So anything which keeps you limited is self-sabotaging. So let me actually put greater context around that. One of my mentors, really, although I've never met him, I met a lot of his students and I learned from them, was a guy in America called Lester Levinson. And Lester Levinson had a saying that we are all unlimited beings, limited only by the concepts that we hold in mind. We are all unlimited beings, limited only by the concepts of limitation that we hold in mind. So what are concepts of limitation? They're ideas. So we are all unlimited except for the ideas of limitation that we hold in mind. So ideas aren't real, they're just thoughts. So we are only limited by our thoughts. So what are self-sabotaging behaviors? They are any behaviors which ultimately limit you from living fully. Whatever living fully is for you, whatever shape or form that takes. How would you know that you are living fully? Just answer that question to yourself. How would you know that you are living fully? Is it something that you do? Is it something that you be? Whatever it is, there's no right and wrong. But anything which stops you from being that person is self-sabotaging. And the name itself, self-sabotaging, it means nobody else can put that right for you because it's you that's having those ideas. So that's what you need to change. You don't even need to change the behaviors. You need to change the ideas that you have first about yourself. And that's crucial because people spend so much time trying to change the behaviors when the cause of the behaviors are the ideas, the thoughts. Dave showed a slide. I don't know if you can bring that one up again, Dave, and just share it with the thoughts, emotions, actions, results. I just want to refer to this one and just want to point it out to you that most people are focusing on the wrong thing in order to change.
Thoughts, actions.
And the tier model.
Yeah.
This will show you very simply. So everything begins with a thought. Most of us don't consider the emotions. We go straight into taking action. So we go from thought to action to results, and yet there are emotions in the way. So all these thoughts that we have lead to certain emotions. Can you go to the next slide? And those emotions affect the quality of the actions we take. If the emotions are of a high quality or a high level, then the actions will be of a high quality or a high level. Let me put it even more simply. If you're feeling really good about yourself, or if you just wake up in the morning and you're feeling really good, what sort of actions do you take? Compared to you wake up in the morning and you're feeling crap. If you're feeling crap, would you take exactly the same type of actions? Would you continue with, you might not change the actions, but the quality of the actions would change. How you do something is affected by how you feel, and that leads to the result. So the self-sabotaging behavior is the action. If you go and change the action, you might do it short term, but if the feeling that is causing the action is there, you'll go back to the action. This is why so many people go on diets, which are yo-yo diets. So many people start the gym in January, on January the 2nd or 3rd, and by January the 31st, they've gone back to not exercising because they haven't changed how they feel in the first place. It is much simpler to deal with self-sabotaging behaviors when you deal with the emotion. And you can work at the thought level and you can work at the emotion level. And if you kind of just watch this, thoughts, we have tens of thousands of them every day. So we get rid of that thought, what happens? There's another one to get rid of. That thought, there's another one to get rid of. 60 to 80,000 of those in just one day. How many do you think you've accumulated in all the years you've been around on this planet? It takes ages. But all of these thoughts, hundreds of them, lead to just one feeling. And yes, there are several feelings, but each feeling is made up of hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of thoughts. You can deal with each one of these individually, or you can deal with that feeling and get rid of the whole lot. And yes, there may be more feelings, because it depends how long you've been around and how much crap you accumulated. But do you want to deal with those hundreds of thousands of thoughts, or do you want to deal with a few feelings? Deal with the feelings and you will change the behaviors. You will start to notice that you stop, or you do those self-sabotaging behaviors less and less and less, and they're replaced by more healthy behaviors. And before you know it, you've even forgotten that you had those self-sabotaging behaviors. And that all comes about because you feel better. So the way to change the behaviors is not to focus on the behavior. The way to change the behavior is to focus on how you feel before the behavior, and deal with that feeling, and you deal with the behavior. So I just wanted to add that to the presentation and explain to you that most people focus on changing the behavior, and that's why they fail. If you think about stop smoking, every Christmas, I used to work in a pharmacy for many years. We would order the stop smoking therapies several months before Christmas, because we knew that people would come in at Christmas, it would be bonanza, lots of people would buy these products, and then a few weeks later, they'd be back at smoking, because they were focusing on changing the behavior of smoking. The reason they were smoking, they didn't change, which meant that after a short while, they had to go back to the smoking. And it could be eating, it could be anything, but the cause is the feeling, not the behavior. The behavior isn't the problem. The behavior is the result of the feeling. So I'm going to open it up to people. What are some of the things that you've been trying to change, and what are the feelings around it? Or any other comments around self-sabotaging behaviors? This is why you're all on here. So let's have some people say something. And can you open up the mics, please, Dave?
If I can open them all up, but it might get a bit crowded.
Okay, if it, for the people that are on screen, put your hand up. For the people that don't have a video or haven't got it enabled, if you do have a video, just enable it. It makes it simpler. Otherwise, use the instructions that Dave gave you. Dave, can you just give them instructions of how to draw attention so we can?
Yes, if you look at the Manage Participants icon at the bottom of your screen, if you haven't already got the big white box up of participants on the right, you click on the button at the bottom, you get the screen on the right with your name and the yes, no, and the thumbs up and thumbs down across the bottom. You just click, if you just hit the green yes button, and we know you've got something you'd like to say, and then we can open the mics up.
And those of you that do have video, just put up your hand so that we can see that. Selena, and I'll come over to you, Selena, and you can speak now.
Oh, hello. So I've got a visitor this evening. Yeah, I'm always sabotaging myself. constantly all the time. It's almost like a built-in pattern that I'm always doing, and everything that you were saying, Dave, related. Everything from relationships to ideas to work scenarios. Yeah, everything. Anything I can do to keep myself down, and it comes from fear. I think the fear of being, I don't know, noticed. I like to hang out in the background where nobody can see me. I don't like to step out and take responsibility, I guess.
And what would happen if you were to step out? What are you afraid of?
I think, thinking about it, I was moved about a lot as a kid. My father was in the RAF, and I think the pattern comes from being placed in a new school. All the attention was on me, and every time that happened, the attention was negative. So it's almost become my story that I play to myself. So every single time I get into a new situation with new people, I'll automatically go to somewhere in my head, I don't know where it is, goes to that kind of scenario. Does that make sense?
Yes. And how did you feel being moved around?
It wasn't too bad the first couple of times, but then as I was growing older and people and kids were getting nastier, it became a fearful situation. And every time it would be, look, here's the new girl. So the attention was directed at me, and they would say my name, and obviously kids being kids would come up with the first horrible thing they could say, and that was that.
And so there's fear there, and there's hiding that comes about as a result of that. Now, as a young kid, that was perfectly reasonable behavior, because if you feel threatened because you're new and everybody else is having a go at you, it's easier just to hide and not actually get into any hassle. But as an adult now, what's it costing you to do exactly the same?
Well, it's costing me my life, really, thinking about it.
And if it's costing you your life, what's the price that you're willing to pay to have a life?
Well, I've got a dog snoring next to me. I don't know if you can hear her. Sorry.
That's what the dog thinks of my presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, anything really. I've been trying to adapt or flick some sort of switch on my mind for years now, and nothing's clicked. I think there's I need to get to the root of that little I don't know what it is, neurosynapsis brain thing, and just unplug it. I haven't found that yet.
Well, do you know any neurosurgeons? Because that's
No, but
the way you're going to do that.
well, that'd be the easy way, wouldn't it?
Well, you've already got a way. You've identified there was fear. Fear of the situation that was causing this. So that's the emotion. And so whenever you go into a new environment, guess what gets triggered? All those memories of when you were young. It's also
and I'll automatically go into hide mode. Hide. Yeah. I'm not here. Yeah, that's what I do.
So here's a suggestion, and it's pretty easy because you can't do it now. So it's a good suggestion because you can't take immediate action, at least not in the way that you're thinking, which is next time you go to an event where there are people, if it's a seminar, make sure you go to the front of the room, front row, and sit in the middle, right in front of everybody, and see what that brings up.
Yeah, I do tend to force myself. You know, I used to wait until last. Now I push myself first, just to kind of push myself over that fear, because the more you do these things, the more comfortable it gets, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's still kind of a background theme.
And you can do it that way, which is through the desensitization route. So people who are phobic, say, of spiders or whatever, you can gently expose them to that phobia and they get over it through the desensitization. But that's also quite painful.
Yeah.
So it's much quicker just to learn how to change the feelings. And you already learned that, I know that, but you've got to do it. And that's why I'm asking you, what is it? What's the price you're willing to pay? Because if you continue what you're doing, you're only robbing yourself of living life.
Yeah, I don't want to spend the next 40 years like this. So yeah, I've got 40 years to spend.
So you can get it done with in a few days or weeks, or you can spend the next 40 years. That's a choice. So when you're fed up of being fed up, when the pain is deep enough for you to actually say, enough, I'm going to look at this. I'm looking at how I'm feeling, and I know that I can change the feeling.
It's little steps in it. It's a build up of so much crap over the years, and it's going to take a little nick here and there.
1/3 of 1%. That's all you need to do every day. And I know you're part of the community that I host. Just start to be more visible on that.
Yeah, I do.
That's
yeah,
the very first step. That's the challenge I would give you. And there's a few people here from that community. Could you pester her until she actually starts to become more visible? There's a lot of people smiling, so I think you're going to get.
Yeah.
Who else? Who else has a self-sabotaging behavior that has affected them or is still affecting them? Gurdeep, you messaged me. Would you mind speaking about yours and sharing what that is? So, Dave, could you just bring Gurdeep?
Who is that? Sorry.
Gurdeep.
Oh, there. Sorry. Thanks for waving. I was looking around the screen. Sorry.
That's okay. Hi.
Hi.
Mine's around eating, sabotage around food. Quite often I'll try different diets and they go really well. And I resonated with a lot of what you said today, Dave and Sanjay, around going on with the diet and then it goes well and then I go back to my old habits because I'm not dealing with why. And I probably don't even know why, if I'm honest with you. I do that at the moment, but allowing myself now to actually think about it, about the thought, is definitely a starting point.
Yeah, and look at how it's affecting your life, because in order to change, first you have to really kind of look inside and say, is this painful enough for me to actually want to do something about it? Because most people who talk about changing, it's a wish, it's a desire, it's a kind of, yeah, that'd be good. But has it got to a point where you say, no, this has to change because it's affecting my life so much?
For me, it gets to the point, I don't know if any of the ladies or guys resonate with that. I've got my normal clothes, my medium, my fat clothes. And when I can't fit into my big clothes, that's it. That's when I feel the pain. I'm like, right, I need to do something. And then when I lose the weight, I get comfortable again. And therefore it stops being an issue. Does that make sense? So anyone relate to that, or is it just me?
There's a lot of nodding heads on here. So I'm curious. So how much more money do you have to spend on clothes because of that? And perhaps you could get,
in the current climate and closing my business down at the moment, probably not as much as I'd like to.
Yeah. And what is it really costing you?
Yeah, my energy, just waste so much energy on it, and time and mind. Your headspace is just focusing on something all the time that if it's put to bed, you can certainly use your focus on so many better things in my life, you know?
Yeah. So think of the things that you would like to improve and look at the life that you have. Okay. So
Yeah.
the key thing here is there's not a huge thing that you have to do, but you have to admit that when you overeat just before reaching for that food for comfort,
Yeah.
there's something going on for you.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you need to look at. What is it that's going on? And what is the feeling behind it?
Yeah.
And it may be as simple as it's a feeling of emptiness. And reaching out for the food is to fill that void. So
I think what I've started to feel, I've tried to listen to myself a bit more recently, is that, and it may just be with everything going on, it seems to be more like anxiety. And do you know what I mean? There's a feeling of anxiety, and therefore I reach for the food just to calm myself down. I didn't realise that's what I'm doing until I've started to listen, but I don't know what's causing that anxiety, or I don't know if I need to know, or whatever. It seems to be anxiety.
yeah, so that's a good insight, because anxiety is in the realm of fear. It's just fear has all sorts of names depending on the level of the fear, and anxiety is amongst the low level fear, but it's kind of something that runs in the background for a lot of people. So if you look around now, if you go out for your daily walk, and there's not that many people to see, but if you do see people, you'll see that a lot of them are very anxious, especially as you get closer to them. And it's that anxiety is exactly the same as the anxiety that you're feeling. The cause of the anxiety doesn't matter. You can spend years trying to find out what the cause is, but what you'll have to do about it, having found the cause, is still the same. And anxiety is like one of these thoughts. There'll be a whole host of them causing the feeling of anxiety. You can deal with the thoughts, which is what's causing the anxiety, and then this anxiety then causes the behavior of overeating.
Okay.
Whether you work at that level or whether you work at that level, you will still be able to change the behavior.
Okay.
Working at that
So
level is done sight easier. Sorry, I missed what you said.
That's okay. So it's changing the anxiety, or trying to manage that anxiety.
Yeah, it's not even because managing means you still have anxiety. You can only manage something that you hold. So all these courses about anger management, complete and utter waste of time and money, because you still have anger. Isn't it better just to get rid of it? So I don't believe in the term managing emotions, because most people, when they talk about managing emotions, they're talking about the emotions that they don't like and they're causing destructive behaviors. Well, why on earth would you want to keep hold of them and manage them? Why do you want to juggle all those? It means you've got to hold a whole load of crap and then just juggle it.
Yeah.
But it's still affecting you. So the root is really to go into the feeling and deal with the feeling. And you can do in days what could take you years through, say, traditional therapy, where you go and sit on a couch and talk about it. And if you're lucky, one day you might just hit on the one thing or the few things that caused the anxiety in the first place.
Yeah.
And I speak from experience, because this is what it was like for me to deal with some of my stuff from the past. That when I realized that working at the emotional level was far quicker, then the root of the self-sabotage became less important. Because if you change the behavior, would you really care what caused it in the first place? Because you also know, whenever you get anxious, what to do with the anxiety, and you stop the anxiety and you stop the behavior.
Okay.
So, and I also know, I think you
Get rid
inquired
of the
about,
anxiety.
yeah, and I know you kind of inquired about the emotional mastery retreat, which
Yeah.
unfortunately, with everything going on, is very unlikely that we'll be able to do in a group of people in person. So we're looking at ways of what to do, or we might just have to wait until all of this is over and then hold it. But you don't need to wait until then. There are other ways. So you're in touch with us. So let's make sure that you and I have a longer chat, and I'll let you know what you can do, rather than kind of wait for a future that may never arrive. You don't want to wait around, wasting precious time.
No.
But thank you for sharing that. Thank you, because fear is something that a lot of people run, and Selena was really saying the same thing when she's talking about the approach is exactly the same, because both of them come from fear. But whether you call it worry, anxiety, fear, or panic, they're all just different levels of the same feeling. Just like you can have mild irritation to annoyance to anger to full-blown rage, just different levels of the feeling of anger. As with all feelings, there are different levels, but it doesn't matter that there are different levels. The cure, if I can call it that, or the solution is exactly the same. And this is the beauty about fear. The feeling of fear creates and every other feeling also creates a biochemical reaction in the body. The biochemistry of the body changes when you feel the feeling. So it doesn't matter whether it's spiders or snakes or planes or eating or whatever else, whether it doesn't matter what the trigger is. The biochemical reaction is exactly the same. So what does that say? It says, doesn't matter what the trigger is, the solution is exactly the same. So if you got more than one fear, you learn to face one fear by learning how to interrupt that biochemical reaction so that the feeling of fear doesn't cause harm. You learn to deal with every other fear that you have in life. So you only need to learn the one thing to deal with all the fears. You only need to learn one thing to deal with all the different types of anger, or all the different types of sadness or grief or whatever. And we've made it so much more complicated as a society because we want a different solution to a different problem. So whatever the cause of the fear then is, or the cause of the anxiety, and if there's more than one, it doesn't matter, because you only need to learn how to deal with the anxiety. The triggers can be different. So if you focus on the triggers, you've got to find a different solution for each trigger. You've got to go around disabling every trigger. Well, why, instead of disabling the trigger, why not interrupt the middle bit, which means it doesn't matter what happens with the trigger. Whichever trigger fires off, it doesn't get past that bit that you've interrupted and create the behavior. Does that help you understand it in a different way to the way you've done it? So what I'm saying is the solution is probably a lot easier than you've been brought up to believe.
Okay, hope so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Anybody else have a question around their particular self-sabotaging behavior?
We also need to be a bit mindful of time as well, Sanjay.
Good point, because I don't know, time doesn't exist for me with that. So it is 9:10. So
this is the Wednesday night webinar, yes. This is self-sabotage, yes. And this has been an hour and a bit, yes. So,
so unless somebody actually says, yes, I have a pressing question I'd like to ask, we're going to call it a night, because I think what Selena shared and what Gurdeep shared actually brought about the crux of what we can do to deal with self-sabotage.
Yeah, I think you summed that up very well.
And those of you that don't know anything about me or don't know much about me, you're in connection with me now through Facebook, so feel free to contact us after this. And all I suggest is let's just have a chat. It'll be a virtual coffee or a virtual pint or whatever it is. For me, this is my pint at the moment, is a big glass of water. And I'll be able to personally kind of, or Dave will answer your questions or, speak to you one-to-one and get to the crux of perhaps what's going on for you. So thank you all very much. And I think that's it for tonight, because I can carry on and on, can't I, Dave?
Yeah, I would just say to everyone, thank you all for your time, your attention, your participation. And no doubt we'll be doing something similar again soon, and we'll let everyone know all about it. So yeah, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye for now.